Welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 4, Episode 13, The Movie. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well out there. Hope you're feeling good. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Hope you are laughing every single day. That's important, as the news and being aware can really keep you down more and more, it seems, day after day. I hope you guys are all finding a little bit of time for laughter and distraction because we need it. It doesn't mean that you're being irresponsible or that you're, being frivolous. It's just we as humans need to recharge and we need to distract ourselves from the things that are stressing us out. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just part of taking care of yourself. So I hope all of you are doing that at some point. I've been doing something a little bit, seems very narcissistic this last week. But I promise the motivation is purely to become a better podcaster and just take this show to a higher level, taking it up a few notches. So I've been binging Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I noticed an uptick in our listenership, I guess. Every day I check the stats just to see, how's it going? How many people have listened to the podcast, how listened to different episodes. So I just noticed kind of a steeper climb than before. So that got me excited. And then I said, well, gosh, I haven't really listened to these earlier episodes. And actually this week marks the 50th episode of Hot and Heavy. I'm very excited about that. That was me patting myself on the back. Because you know what? I spent a lot of my life not at all giving myself credit for things I should have some credit for. Thinking nothing I did was really worthy of anything. So I'm going to pat myself on the back because I'm pretty proud of myself. But on that note, doing this whole podcast was a venture that I dove into without any knowledge, really. I didn't know a lot about recording or editing. So just doing good old YouTube research, I taught myself what I needed to know. And so listening back, I think I'm on episode 13 now of the podcast. And it's been interesting. It kind of goes up and down. Every now and then I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. Or, oh man, the editing. Oh gosh, I hope to think I've gotten better, but some of those cuts are so rough. As I'm thinking about new people listening to the podcast, I'm a little bit embarrassed at some of those earlier episodes. Sometimes it's just mostly the editing. Sometimes it's even the content. One thing I did notice was how in the earlier episodes, I did a much better job of really staying focused on Elaine and Elaine's contribution to the episode. I think I've really bled into really covering a lot of the episode and a lot that doesn't involve Elaine. So I get a little verbose about non-Elaine things. And I really think it's because we're getting into episodes that have just so much more substance and are a lot better. So I think I find myself more excited to talk about the entirety of the episode versus just what Elaine's in. But knowing that now and noticing and observing that tendency, I think I'm going to try and really make it more about just Elaine. So with all of that, let's get into the movie. The synopsis for the movie is as follows. Jerry tries unsuccessfully to perform new comedy material and see a movie with his friends on the same night. An annoying comedian tags along with Jerry, much to his dismay. George becomes a victim of a movie usher's bad memory. Elaine loses her coat in a movie theater, but Kramer finds it. This episode is written by Steve Scroven, Bill Masters, and John Heyman. Those are very new names. So they're all stand-ups and were brought on by Jerry and Larry as they started the 4th season. So very interesting. A really solid episode, not written by Jerry or Larry Charles or Peter Melman, all the writers we've been used to, but a really solid episode nonetheless. So getting into it, we start at the Improv Comedy Club. Jerry is talking to the club manager. He's annoyed because apparently the show is being delayed. He's got this whole night planned out. He's got another spot downtown. If it's delayed, he won't be able to make it. And Jerry's more stressed than usual because he's doing Letterman on Monday. He needs to work out the material. He sees another comedian, Buckles is his name, and it's clear right away Jerry's not a fan. And the manager says, he's not putting him on. He just, he hangs out in case someone drops out. Finally, the manager says, look, I can get you on at 11 o'clock. Well, Jerry was supposed to see a movie with friends, but you know what? Forget it. He'll be back for the 11 o'clock spot, but he needs to make his other set. And so he's out the door, not before Buckles tries to engage Jerry, and Jerry just gives him a kind of a drive-by hi and leaves quickly. Then we see a shot of George arriving to the movie theater, standing outside, and he asks the guy in front of him if he has a ticket, and the guy says no. So good, he goes and stands in that line. Next, we are at Catch a Rising Star Comedy Club. Jerry is being reprimanded by that club manager. He missed his 9:15 spot. Jerry's like, I thought you said 9:50. Well, the manager was forced to give his spot away to one of his peers. And then Buckles comes out of that theater and greets Jerry. Then he asks Jerry his opinion on his athlete's foot bit, basically how my father gets it all the time, and believe me, he's no athlete. Jerry says he's got to go. He's got to go to the movies. He needs to tell his friends he can't make it because he's going to do that spot at the comedy club. And Buckles wants to split a cab. Jerry says, it could be a while. I got time, Jerry. And then we're back at the movie theater. It's called the Paragon. Elaine comes up to George in line and sort of does this like knee buckling move from the back. It's one of my favorite moves too. I like doing that to people. She asks where everybody is. And George says, they're all late because they know reliable George will show up on time. Elaine is so excited. She's been dying to see Checkmate. And George says if it's anything like Ponce de Leon, he'll be happy. Ew, Elaine makes a face. She hated that movie. Ponce de Leon? What? That was great. Oh, God. And then she acts out this fountain of youth scene. Apparently everyone's splashing around and then runs to a mirror to see if it really worked. Oh, come on. It was so stupid. And George totally disagrees. When Ponce looked in the mirror and he hadn't changed, he saw that tear coming down his cheek. He lost it. Kramer arrives, and they ask where he's been. He's like, I went to the Paradise Twin. And Elaine insists she didn't tell him that. She told him the Paragon because she wants to see this movie on the big screen. That Paradise is a twin theater. She never would have said that. Kramer looks across the street, and he wants to get a Papaya King hot dog. He's starving, hasn't had any dinner. George and Elaine stop him. They say, no. We don't have time for that. Just get a hot dog in the movie theater. Well, he doesn't want a movie theater hot dog. He wants a Papaya King hot dog. Elaine explains, look, Jerry will arrive any second and this line will start moving. And Kramer says, well, just save him a seat. And she's like, no. Do not put me through that. She once had the fleece ripped out of her coat in a seat-saving incident. We have a Jacket Watch. This is our 8th installment of Jacket Watch. Now, this is my attempt at tracking every jacket-centric plot line or plot point in every episode. This is a result of a comedian, Neil Brennan, pointing out to Jerry Seinfeld in a Comedians and Cards and Coffee episode that while he didn't really watch Seinfeld very much, every time he tuned in, they were worried about a jacket. Oh, that just delighted me to no end. So I said, hey, I'm going to just track it all. So this is our 8th installment, Elaine's coat. She talks about how her coat got damaged. She's worried about her coat if she has to save a seat in this episode. So, she's not down for saving seats. Kramer says, fine, just give me my ticket. And George says, well, I don't have them yet. Elaine looks a little worried. What do you mean you don't have them yet? Well, I'm in line to buy. George, this is the ticket holder's line. No, it's not. Then how come we're not moving? Good question, Kramer asks. Then George asks that same guy he talked to before, and he says, hey, is this the ticket holder line or the buyer line? The guy looks at him and says, holders. What? But when I asked you before, you said you didn't have a ticket. Yeah, well, that guy's friend was getting his ticket. George says, that's good. That's good to be accurate like that. Oh, so George says, fine, just wait here. I'll get the tickets. Elaine just can't believe it, turns to Kramer. How long would you have waited? He doesn't say anything. Yeah, exactly. George returns. It's sold out. Oh, real good, George. Real good. Kramer says that there's another show at the Paradise and they can still make it. Oh, Elaine's so bummed out. She doesn't want to see it there. And George says it's the same movie. What's the difference? Oh, she just can't stand how small it is. It's like where they take POWs to show propaganda films. Well, George says, look, I'm going. And Kramer says, it's in Dolby. I love that that's Kramer's way of, really making the case. It's in Dolby. But what about Jerry? And so Kramer offers, I'll wait here for Jerry. You guys go, get the tickets, and he'll see you over there. So George and Elaine exit, and Kramer stays back, but he's looking longingly at the Papaya King across the street. He's so hungry. All right, the purpose of this scene, we see what Jerry references earlier, the movie outing with his friends. We also see how George's mistake causes this switch of theater in which they have to see the movie. There's lots of setup here with the excitement of the movie for Elaine. Kramer is hungry. They have to change theaters, but someone needs to wait for Jerry. A lot happening in this scene. And this is a fun scene. That's my take. A lot of information to get out, but it's done in a really entertaining way. The moment at the beginning where Elaine is making fun of Ponce de Leon, so funny. And that is really JLD breaking. In fact, you can see Jason Alexander laughing a bit while she's delivering that line and he's watching her. And I loved how they kept that take in. It's so clear that they were having, I think it is in the bloopers. I haven't watched the bloopers in a while for this season, but I believe there is a blooper for this moment. But I love that they kept that take in because you clearly see her breaking. And her read of that chunk of dialogue is so funny. I love, again, this physicality comes out again. I love how she's acting out the splashing around and look in the mirror. She's cracking herself up and it's totally justified. I just love it. And then the way she said, so stupid at the end, she can barely get it out. So delightful. I love how passionate Elaine is about her movie going experience. She wants to see it on the big screen, not in a multiplex with smaller screens. No way. Overall, the scene is very entertaining and it does a really great job, again, of getting a lot of information out, a lot of exposition. All right, moving on. We see Jerry in a cab with Pat Buckles. And God, he's boring the hell out of Jerry with mundane conversation, annoying Jerry about fish. And then we go to the Paradise Twin, the other theater, the multiplex theater, and George gets the tickets, joins Elaine in line. She's like, beautiful. And then George points out that, this theater's also playing Rochelle, Rochelle. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Elaine says, men will sit through the most pointless, boring movie if there's even a slightest possibility that a woman will take her top off. So what's your point? She laughs at him just admitting that. And then George points out, yeah, you owe me $7.50 for the ticket. And he doesn't have change for a 20, which is all Elaine has. So she says, well, I'll just pay you later. Or George points out she could give him the 20 and he could pay her back. It might be easier. She says, well, but then you'd owe me $12.50 instead of me owing you $7.50. Either way, yeah, it's the same thing. George pauses. So can I have it? Elaine's like, look, I'll get the popcorn and soda. What do you mean you'll get the popcorn and soda? I'll buy your popcorn and soda. And then George just won't stop. You give me the $20, I'll buy your popcorn and soda, and then I'll throw in a bonbons. Ugh, George, you're sapping my strength. Elaine is holding up the line. Someone yells to move, but Elaine says, what about Jerry and Kramer? George says, look, I'll wait. You just save the seats. Oh, and she panics. We already know she doesn't want to. 3 seats? I can't save 3 seats. I told you about my jacket. Oh, finally she goes in, very unhappy and very stressed. The purpose of these scenes, we see Jerry's plot of sort of being stuck in a cab or all over the city with this annoying guy Buckles. We move the movie story along at the other theater, and Elaine will have to save seats after all. My take, I love when Elaine points out how dumb and superficial men are. And more than that, I love that George doesn't even deny it. This is the type of banter that makes Seinfeld what it is, like pointing out the relatable characteristics about society and just accepting them as fact instead of making it into an argument. She's not pissed about this tendency of men to sit through pointless drivel because boobs might make an appearance. She's just pointing out the ridiculousness of it. And her laugh when George says, well, what's your point? It's so refreshing. It's sort of, again, going against the trope of women being the heavy, being the fun governors. And, that's a big reason I love Elaine so much. Not that Elaine never gets angry. We know she does. But it's these types of moments where it's like, and I'm listening to my earlier episodes. I do mention this quite a bit. But, that whole thing where women just don't have a sense of humor a lot in these sitcoms. The characters are always just like rolling their eyes at the men. I like that she points this out, like, yeah, this is a dumb thing, but then just she laughs it off. That's such a nice light moment. And George and Elaine scenes are always so much fun. I love when they're paired up, just the two of them. Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Jason Alexander, they play off each other so well. And this comedic chemistry is so undeniable. But also the relationship with their characters, Elaine and George, it's so nuanced and layered. I mean, in this scene, they go through kind of an amused moment in the beginning to George annoying her about paying him back. And she doesn't get overly upset, just kind of exhausted from that. You're sapping my strength. These two are just so fantastic together. And it's always been a relationship that I've enjoyed. And our contributor, Greg, really kind of made me realize that. He pointed it out in an early episode when he made some comments that the Elaine and George relationship is his favorite relationship of the series. And I have to agree. It's magic. All right, next we are in the cab. Jerry is so pissed. They're stuck in traffic and he blames Buckles because he told the cabbie to go a certain way. And then Buckles just goes into this bit, how famous people or people throughout history would react to traffic, doing all these impressions. He wants to give the bit to Jerry, but Jerry's like, I don't do the voices. Don't start with me, Jerry. Oh, I got to get out of this cab. Oh, this is really well done. I love how much you feel how annoying Buckles is and how Jerry's like, this is torture. This is my nightmare, to be stuck in traffic in a cab when I need to get places. And I'm with this idiot. I did like this moment. Okay, it's a non-Elaine scene, but when Buckles like, but we're riffing, Jerry. No, I'm not riffing. I'm ignoring. Do you know the difference? And then just Buckles out of nowhere just says, can you get me on the Tonight Show? No self-awareness with Buckles. So we're back in the movie theater. Now, Elaine is inside the theater. She's in full seat-saving mode. A guy comes up, kind of skipping down the stairs even, and he tries to take the seats. And she says, no, these are taken. Come on, you can't take 4 seats. What is that, a rule? Another woman comes down and asks if the stuff on the seats are Elaine's. And then George also comes up behind that woman and says, look, they didn't show up. I'm going to miss the beginning, so I'm going to sit down. So that woman overhears George and says, well, we'll take these seats. Can you please remove your things? Elaine says, no, they'll be here. But I am here. They are not. They're coming. The actress who plays the woman trying to get the seats is named Montrose Higgins. She had quite an acting career. She started acting in her 60s, actually, and made the rounds on really every big television show until the early 2000s. She did pass away in 2012 at the age of 88. Now, Montrose will return for another episode of Seinfeld. She will play a woman who questions Kramer's protest of the post office. Shouldn't you be wearing the bucket? I believe Kramer tells her to move along, Betty. I love her. I think this is a really fun moment, and I like that she's given it to Elaine here. And what a great line. But I am here. They are not. And I sort of agree with her. Like, your friends are late. Snooze, you lose. Really fun performance. So then Elaine sort of takes charge here. She's saving the seats. Then she instructs George, run over to the Paragon, give Kramer and Jerry their tickets, and then rush back. Then you won't miss the beginning. You can tell George really doesn't want to. He suggests maybe she should go. I mean, she doesn't want to save seats anyway. And then this guy comes up and she yells, taken, taken. She says, I'm getting the hang of it. Well, George brings up the money again, of course, says to give him the $20. He can make change. Can we do this later, George? He softens, what's the difference? You'll pay me when you pay me. Yeah, I trust you. The purpose of this scene, we see Elaine living her fear here, saving multiple seats. And we also see the plot move along with George having to go back to the other theater to give Jerry and Kramer their tickets. My take on the scene, I like how we see Elaine find her strength with the seat saving. She has to be pretty confrontational, which we know is not a problem for Elaine. I know this is played up for the plot, but saving seats is such a normal thing in a movie theater. No one gets that aggressive about it, but apparently in this scenario, Elaine is the only one in the theater saving seats, and people are pissed about it. I also love that George is still thinking about getting paid back. You know, it's just so true to his character. He just keeps bringing up the stupid $20. So funny. All right, now we're back at the Paragon. Kramer is waiting and waiting for Jerry. He's still staring at the Papaya King and practically drooling. Then he makes a decision, you can tell. He trips over the rope to get to the ticket woman and asks her for a favor. If she sees a guy about 5'11", big head with flared nostrils, tell him his friend's going to be right back. This woman just stares at him and he exits. The actress here is Molly Cleater. Not a ton of credits on IMDb. She's silent in this scene, but I love her performance later when she is talking to Kramer. The way she describes George, it's a very bit part, but I think it's a very memorable performance. I sort of love her like non-blinking expression and the way she sort of says the look like Humpty Dumpty with the melon head. She's funny. All right, we're back at the Paradise Twin. We see Elaine saving seats left and right. It's becoming more and more intense. She keeps saying these seats are taken, they're taken. And then finally, she lets 3 people take all the saved seats. I mean, Elaine could only keep this up for so long. I can see why she caved. People just keep standing there. We're back at the Paragon. George approaches the same ticket woman. Kramer is probably over at Papaya King. He asks if she's seen a guy with a horse face, big teeth, a pointed nose, flared nostrils. George says, oh yeah, haven't seen him. And George nods and leaves. So after George leaves, Kramer's still not there. Jerry is exiting the cab. And Buckles asks if he can store his trench coat in Jerry's closet for a few months. We have a 9th installment of Jacket Watch. 2 in 1 episode. How lucky are we? So Buckles' trench coat is now our 9th installment of Jacket Watch. Yet another jacket being mentioned. Apparently his closet is full and he can't store his trench coat. Of course, Jerry says no. And then Buckles notices that his friends aren't there. Jerry says, well, they're probably inside. I'm just going to run in. So Jerry gets in and Buckles leaves. After Jerry goes in, Kramer comes back and asks the ticket woman if she's seen his friend. She says no, but then this is the part I love where she talks about there was a short guy with glasses, looked like Humpty Dumpty with the melon head, but then he left. So funny. All right, moving on. In the theater here with Elaine, a woman is yapping away behind Elaine, bragging about her son. He's vacuuming, he's lip syncing to a chorus line. Now, this actress is played by Kathy Lind Hayes. She's acted in pretty much everything since the 70s, lots of guest spots on different shows. I think this performance is very funny. The braggy mom, such a fun character to play. Elaine turns around and says, excuse me, what's the problem? You're talking. It's the coming attractions. And that lady just goes back to yapping about her son. So annoying. Out in the lobby, George is trying to enter, but the ticket taker asks him for his ticket. And he says, oh, I was already in, but I had to leave for a bit. Well, do you have your stub? My stub? Who keeps the stub? George starts rooting around, can't find a stub. He's like, you don't remember me? I came in with a pretty woman, kind of short. She's got a wall of hair, face like a frying pan. The guy has no recollection. And George said, I can't find my stub. And the guy says, I can't let you in without your stub. So George gives one of the other tickets. And we see him go into the theater while Elaine is exiting from the other door of the theater. Inside, George is sort of whisper shouting to try and find Elaine. And everyone's getting so pissed at him. And they start yelling at him. And they basically yell him out through the exit door, which leads to an alley outside. We go back to the Paragon. We see a parallel scene, if you will, with Jerry in a dark theater calling out for Elaine. And, no one's answering. Obviously, they're not there. He gives up and he's about to leave when he gets distracted by the trailer for Rochelle. And he even trips over a step. He's so distracted. Outside, we see Kramer munching on his hot dog and just waiting around still. And finally, he gives up and he exits to the other theater. Just when he gets out of frame, Jerry comes out and tries to catch a cab. The purpose of these scenes, just a lot of moving parts, just showing where everyone is. My take, I love the Elaine interaction here with that woman. She's so annoyed by a woman who's so annoying. And I'm so on Elaine's side here. Even if it's the coming attractions, why do people have to speak at full volume? And I also love the choice here to have this woman behind her bragging about her son. Now, look, I am a mother and I find this super annoying as well. Being a mom doesn't absolve you, or being a parent, I should say, doesn't absolve you from being annoyed by other parents who like brag about their kids. No one likes to listen to a parent just bragging and going on and on about their kid. Not unless you're like directly related, but even that's iffy. So between, the full volume yapping of this woman and it being about her son and how great he is, it's a perfect scenario that a lot of people would be so irritated by. Okay, moving on. We had seen Elaine exiting from the theater. In the previous scene, it's because she's going to the concession stand. So she's trying to order what she wants. And she's having some issues with her order because no sizes are what they're supposed to be. And there's this really funny back and forth with the concession cashier. And the actress here who plays the concessionaire is Christy Malore. She's worked on several projects since the 80s. Nothing too recent, actually. It looks like her later work is more voice acting. And I can see why. She has a cute voice. And I think she's awesome in this scene. Look, my ultimate fantasy, acting wise, would be to like star in a buddy movie with JLD. But then I also recognize like how fun this would be just to be like a day player on a show and have a one-on-one funny scene with JLD. What a blast. What a fun day this must have been for Christy Malore. This back and forth about the sizes and the butter flavoring. It's so fun. And it's really just kind of like this ping pong of dialogue, which is I'm sure they had to rehearse together. So I just have all these fantasies of what Christy Malore's day must have been like. To perfect this, they would definitely have had to rehearse, and just how fun. And I think Christy Malore really holds her own with JLD here. Really, really fun scene between these two very funny women. All right, we cut to Jerry getting a cab. It took him forever. And the guy says, "Very busy tonight, very busy." And then also the cabbie asks do you have a cigarette? Jerry, of course, doesn't. Okay, back at the lobby of the Paradise Twin, the same guy asks George for his ticket as he's re-entering after getting shouted into the alley. George cannot believe this. We just did this a minute ago. This guy is like a robot. I can't let you in without your stub. I got the stub. You want the stub? I got the stub. I put it right in my pocket. I got the stub. He can't find it though. So he gives the other ticket and he's so irritated and he kind of gets distracted by the Rochelle Poster and he just decides to go see Rochelle. But he doesn't see Elaine at the concession stand and she doesn't see him. Then Kramer arrives, and all he has to say to this same ticket taker guy who's so strict with George, he explains, "Well, I'm late. My friend's already in there. She has my ticket." All right, go ahead. I thought that was really funny. All right, the purpose of this scene, we're heightening the mess of this night. The whole, everything's becoming so discombobulated with their original plans. And that's what we're seeing here. Everyone is in different places and no one seems to be having any luck with anything. And my take, well, I already went over how fun I think that concession stand scene is. And also it's very relatable to this day. Movie theater concessions, what a freaking ripoff, right? And nothing can be just as small. I always overeat popcorn because they don't have like normal human sizes anymore. They haven't for like 30 years. It's entrapment, just like George says about the bookstore with the bran muffins and the coffee and reading material. It is entrapment. Like, you're not allowed to bring in your own snacks. If you want to snack during the movie, you're forced to shell out like tons of money for sizes you don't even want. And then you end up, if you're like me, you end up having a stomachache afterwards because you have no self-control. And that's the movie theater's fault, clearly, not mine. All right, moving on, we're in the cab. And the cabbie tells Jerry, "I'm very sorry, I need to stop for gasoline." Jerry, he's running late. Oh, this whole night is just Jerry running late for everything. And he asks, "Can you wait?" "No, it's impossible. It's on empty." And Jerry looks at the gauge and agrees, okay. Then we see Elaine. She's returning to the dark theater with her snacks in hand. She can't find her seat. She's freaking out. "Oh my God, where's my seat?" People, just like with George, people are getting so irritated, telling her to get out of the way. Move! No, you move! Everyone starts yelling and she just runs out of the theater. Then we get a shot of George watching Rochelle in a theater full of dudes. He's clearly entranced. And then a very tall man sits in front of him, blocking his view. Elaine then comes out and complains to the ticket taker guy that she lost her seat and her coat is in the theater. She's also got popcorn just in that wall of hair trapped in the wall. He tells her, well, there's a seat in the front row. No, I can't sit in the front row. Then you'll just have to wait. I can't stand around here for 2 hours. Then he suggests, well, you can see Rochelle. Thanks. She walks away, but then comes back and asks if he's seen a guy. She's talking about Kramer, tall, lanky doofus with a bird face and hair like the Bride of Frankenstein. I haven't seen him. Okay, Elaine exits. And purpose of this scene, just things getting messier for everyone. And my take, I love the "you move" retort by Elaine. It's so Elaine. I love how it kind of makes no sense. It's very juvenile, but she's not taking anyone's shit. This night is such a disaster. Her interaction with the ticket guy is really funny as well. And I just love the description. I love all the descriptions, I want to say. I think that's such a fun part of this episode, how every character gets described physically. The description that Elaine gives about Kramer is no different. And it's so perfect that Elaine is basically forced into seeing Rochelle. All right, then we move on to the cab. They're at the gas station. Jerry is trying to rush this cabbie. I'm going to be late. I'm going to miss my spot. But now the cabbie needs cigarettes. God, this guy. Now we're back to Kramer. He's the only one watching Checkmate, the movie that they originally wanted to see. And it looks like he's got another Papaya King hot dog in his pocket and starts eating it. But then he spills something on the seat, but it's not the seat. He finds a coat in that seat. Then we see Jerry run into the improv. Did I make it? Nope. Jerry was too late. Buckles got his spot. Jerry was so pissed. What a night. Then Buckles suggests, we could still catch most of Rochelle. Well, that does pique Jerry's interest. So we're in the theater now with Rochelle playing. We see Elaine just, wincing at this movie. Same with Jerry. He's rolling his eyes. Elaine can't even take it anymore. She says, give me a break. Jerry hears that and sees her. Elaine? Jerry! And George hears them. George! She's so excited to see them. Does this movie stink or what? Let's get out of here. So they all exit. So in the lobby, they all come together. George sat in gum, poor guy. And then Elaine explains she was watching Rochelle because some creep took her seat when she went to get popcorn. And in true George fashion, he insists that Jerry pay for his ticket even though he didn't use it. And Jerry only has a 20. Kramer comes out and joins them with Elaine's jacket on his shoulders. And then she figures out, you took my seat. Not only that, but Kramer got mustard on her coat. Oh man, worrying about a coat. It's happening quite a bit in this episode. And George isn't concerned with any of this. He is asking Kramer for his money. Kramer only has a 20, of course. And the purpose of this scene, everything gets resolved and they all end up together in the end. And my take, this is one of the better endings in the series. I love when they all end up together. That's always the best, when they are all together at the end of the episode, especially in an episode when they've all sort of been separated the whole time. Elaine's coat gets ruined again at the movies. Oh man, and George bugging everyone to pay him back. We're just seeing these snippets of their true characters all around, and it's such a fun scene and a great ending. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side.
Brian Mills fought for his family. He fought for his good name. He fought for his murdered wife. And now, 7 years later, he's enjoying a quiet life after the CIA. Long walks in the park, being a grandpa, falling asleep multiple times a day in a Barcalounger. Until one day, someone needed him.
Dad, it's Kim. I need you.
Kim, oh God, have you been taken? It all came rushing back.
No, Dad, stop always thinking I've been taken. We're just running late for the movie. Lenore took a longer nap than usual. Can you save us 4 seats?
Oh, sure thing, honey. Agent Mills takes on a new mission, and no one stands a chance. Taken! These are taken! Excuse me, are these taken? They're taken, goddammit! Liam Neeson returns as Brian Mills, a loving grandfather and father who will do whatever it takes to protect his family from sitting in the front row.
Come on, you can't save that many seats, dude. I'm getting the usher.
Don't try me, motherfucker. They're taken!
Calm down, jeez.
Watch as the minutes tick by and the theater fills up. Will Brian keep his family safe from next strain?
Sir, we're going to have to ask you to not threaten the other patrons. This is an animated movie. You're scaring the children. Also, are you sure your party is coming? I mean, the show starts.
She just texted, dickhead. They're looking for parking. Brian Mills is back, and he's still really intense. Listen, I'm not leaving, okay? I'm not giving up until my daughter and grandkids are safely in their seats. These seats are taken. Watch Liam Neeson reprise his role as the father who will risk it all for his family.
Dad, we made it.
Oh, Kim, here are your seats, safe and sound.
Oh,
What is it, Kim? Is someone following you to take you?
No, Dad, it's just, well, Brian Jr. loves to sit in the front row.
This summer, get ready for an action-packed thrill ride with twists and turns. Liam Neeson stars in Taken 4. They're coming.
And we're back. There weren't very many extras for this episode, but I will mention a couple of things from the notes about nothing. One thing I liked, and this is just to mention for all of you writing nerds out there like me, Jerry was very proud of the fact that none of his writers were experienced sitcom writers. So like I mentioned, the writers for this episode were all stand-ups. And so that's kind of who they honed in on for their writing staff. And no doubt that helped Seinfeld really stand out. In fact, the guy who sits next to Elaine in the theater when she gives up the seats, he's in the white hat. That is one of the writers of this episode, Steve Scrovan. Scrovan? Just choose one of those. This episode, no scenes were filmed in Jerry's apartment or Monk's. And lastly, this was just so 90s. I loved it. The band 10,000 Maniacs visited the Seinfeld set during the filming of this episode. Oh, that took me back. These Are Days was a big song for me back then. I really loved it. But man, I haven't thought about that band in forever. I mean, I don't think 10,000 Maniacs music stands the test of time. I hope I'm not offending a lot of super fans out there of 10,000 Maniacs, but I think I will listen to These Are Days today, though. That was a solid song. All right, moving on to Contributor Corner. Greg sent in some thoughts this week, and I should mention that yesterday, Greg had quite an experience. He is pretty much our liaison to all things New York City. If you follow us on Instagram, which you should, it's Hot Heavy Elaine on Instagram. I've posted some of the photos that Greg has been so nice to provide. He went to the Costanza's house and took a picture. He's also sent in some ringdings and Drake's coffee cake to me, very true New York things that are mentioned in Seinfeld. So he is our official New York City liaison for Hot and Heavy. But this was the ultimate. So he went to the set of a movie that JLD is currently filming in New York. And from a distance, he saw her and he was able to snap some photos of her. She looks adorable. She's super tiny. No surprise there. She's a petite woman. I haven't posted them. Greg was having a conversation with one of the PAs and he was asked not to post any of the photos on social media. So I'm hesitant. And they're cute. Like they're from kind of far away, but you definitely see it's JLD. And okay, well, here's my reasoning. My ultimate pie in the sky dream for this show is that one day, I mean, I laugh when I say it, but I'm a believer. I'm an optimist. I'm a dreamer. One day JLD will be on this show and I will get the chance to meet her and interview her. I'm putting that out in the universe because you know what? Why not? Why can't? Everything's possible, right? So I don't want to piss anyone off. So I'm not going to post those photos. Anyway, Greg had a very exciting day yesterday. He was messaging me these photos and yeah, just So great. Thank you, Greg, for doing that. I feel like you might have done that anyway, but if you did it for the podcast, we so appreciate it. I love how I always say we. I appreciate it. This is all me. All me, guys. All me. All right, so let's get into Greg's comments. He says, since I was 5 feet away from JLD herself today watching her film a scene from her new movie Beth and Dawn, I knew I had to get my opinions in on the latest episode. Side note, she is tiny and adorable in person and has a great smile, and she seemed friendly to everyone who was working on the shoot. Ah, I love that. No surprise. The scene she was filming in Central Park involved her buying a Ben & Jerry's ice cream cone and eating it, and I saw them do it enough times that she probably ate a half a gallon by the time she was done. Wow, I'm surprised she didn't have a spit bucket, but yeah, good for her. And there was a continuity person with a new ice cream cone for each take. I wanted to go up to her, but she was talking to the director and a few other people, and I didn't want to be that guy. I can't wait to see JLD in another movie. Oh, what a fantastic experience, Greg. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you were able to see her and be that close to her. How exciting. That really actually does surprise me. She did not have a spit bucket. I feel like that's standard on so many sets. I was just doing a shoot where one of the actors needed a spit bucket and it was so gross. He apologized every time, but it wasn't his fault. He had to be like shoving all this food in his face. Oh my God. Side note, I am so sorry. There's noise in my house right now, but I have to be recording at this moment. So hopefully you can hear me well. So, okay, Beth and Dawn is the movie. I saw JLD post something on her Instagram about it, the announcement about it, and how excited she was to start filming. So very, very cool. What a fun experience for Greg. I'm so happy for you. A true JLD super fan. You deserve to see her in person. So I'm so, so happy for you. And thank you so much for sending me those pictures. And to add a little bit of commentary on what Greg said here about how she seemed so friendly to everyone who was working on the shoot, I haven't mentioned this on the podcast, but Sam Richardson, who played Richard Splett on Veep, he is a fellow Detroiter. And so when I was back in Detroit in the improv scene, I met him a couple of times at the Detroit Improv Festival because at a certain point, he and Tim Robinson, another Detroiter, they were filming a show called Detroiters in Detroit. How many times can I say Detroit? Anyway, this is all to say that I met Sam Richardson a few times. And one of the times I did get the courage up to just ask him about Julia Louis-Dreyfus and tell him, you know, she is my biggest comedic influence and I absolutely love her. What was it like? And he just smiled and he was like, she's amazing. She's everything you think she would be. Like, she's incredible. It was just a nice relief to hear that because I have talked to people who are from Detroit who've gone on to do really amazing things in Hollywood. And sometimes you do get dish about people who you think are really great. And then they're like, no, they're total assholes. I won't mention those people. But anyway, I've gotten some of that dish, but it was so wonderful and sort of relieving to hear that Julia Louis-Dreyfus is just as delightful as we think she is. All right, moving on, Greg says, I like this episode because it's one of those where it doesn't tie to any other storyline that exists in the season. It's similar to the Chinese restaurant episode in that it is really about nothing. True. Yeah, this is just a very standalone, this is what's happening. All of them have their character traits that have been established and they're all just coming out in this particular situation. And you're exactly right, Greg. It just kind of stands alone on itself. Greg goes on to say, I love the discussion where George and Elaine are debating who should pay whom now for the tickets. He is so petty, and as this goes on, Elaine gets more and more tired of his bullshit. Just wait until he buys her a big salad. The worry about saving seats is a funny bit that pays off when she ultimately becomes a pro at it until she has no choice but to give up the seats. It's almost from this point on that each of the four has their own solo scenes, which is such a clever way to have this play out. Yeah, it is. I like that we see, you know, kind of pairings or triplets of the cast. And then, yeah, at a certain point, we're just seeing all of them solo. It's such a, like you said, Greg, a clever way to have this episode structured. Very enjoyable way and kind of surprisingly enjoyable. You know, you think it's an ensemble comedy, but hey, that's how strong all of these people are. They can be on their own and have really, really fun scenes and really strong comedic moments as well. Next, Greg says, my favorite bit of this episode is how they describe the looks of each other to the theater workers. Horse face, wall of hair. Very funny to me because they'd probably be offended by these descriptions. Absolutely. Face like a frying pan, but like I see it. It sounds so insulting, but it's like, and she's a beautiful woman, but yes, she does have a wall of hair, and somehow her face does resemble a frying pan. I totally get it. Lastly, Greg says, while this episode isn't as hilarious as others of the season, I do respect how they tried to make the plot of the four friends trying to go to a movie together. The Jerry plot takes up a lot of time and isn't really funny at all, and the Kramer and George bits of going back and forth are more frustrating than funny. All that aside, I'm going to bask in the joy of having seen JLD in person today. By all means, Greg, bask away. I don't know. I would need a while to recover from that for sure. I can see what you're saying about the frustration of, everything. Oh, they have to go back. They have to go back and forth. Like logistically, if I'm thinking about that in real life, what a nightmare. Absolutely. But I think what I respect about this episode is just all of those moving parts. They really had to keep this timeline straight, Jerry's set times, when the movie is, what time is it? Like at one point Kramer asks, well, what time is it right now? 20 after 10. So it's really interesting and very challenging, I think, as writers to do that. So I really respect, even though I do agree with you, it is kind of frustrating, more frustrating than funny. I think just as writers and to structure an episode around this, it's really a big chunk of this is just about timing. I give them credit for that for sure. Thank you so much, Greg. Wow. So envious of you and your experience that you had seeing JLD in person. And if you would like to see JLD in person, well, join the club. But also, if you would like to contribute to this show, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. My favorite Elaine moment, it has to be the Ponce de Leon moment where she's breaking. I love the very real laugh before she says, "This is stupid." She kind of bends down. She's so in that moment and having such a good time. I love it. And I have to say too, even though it's an Elaine favorite moment, I love seeing Jason Alexander sort of this, you can see just a slight angle of his face and you see him totally giggling as she's doing it. So it's very, very fun. And my final notes, this is a very fun episode. No scenes in the usual places like Jerry's apartment or Monk's. I like also how we see a scene with Kramer, Elaine, and George without Jerry. That interaction is pretty rare, but it was totally delightful. We're very much past now that Jerry needs to be there as the nucleus of the group, and I think that's great. It was a funny bit in that episode, like, oh, you have to be there, Jerry. But no, here we're saying they're all comfortable with each other. Jerry can be there, Jerry can't be there. It doesn't matter. Jerry being on his own and apart from the main cast was interesting. And I liked that they tried that. I'm not sure if it was very successful. He certainly needs someone like I think his name's Barry Diamond, who plays Pat Buckles. He needed that to make his scenes more interesting, but I think it was also believable. I'm sure it was written that way because all of these stand-ups have these annoying kind of hacky stand-up friends who annoy them. So it was probably very realistic from their point of view. This episode has a lot of Elaine and George together, which is so entertaining. And there's really fun use of guest actors as well in this episode. The cashier, the concession woman, that ticket guy, Pat Buckles. And when the guest actors are so strong, like all the ones in this episode, that just makes for a richer experience, I believe. And finally, this episode also played very balanced. I feel like everyone got a really good chunk of their own plot and a good chunk of comedy for everyone. So that's my favorite, when everything is very balanced. I mean, if you've listened to other episodes where there's not a lot of Elaine substance, you see how I get. I'm not happy. But I'd rather it be, of course, I love it when there's majority Elaine, but when it's all balanced with the main four, that's sort of, to me, the perfect structure that they should always strive for. So all in all, a really fun, really classic episode. And I think that's all I can say about the movie. 50th episode. Oh, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.